There's a moment when you realize that everything you've been taught about power is a carefully constructed lie. Not the obvious lies. Those are easy to spot. The subtle ones. The ones that make you believe that strength comes from waiting, that wisdom means accepting, that maturity requires compromise. The moment this illusion shatters, you're left standing in a landscape that looks familiar but operates by entirely different rules. The weak still move through their choreographed dances of submission, but you see the strings now. You understand the game, and once you understand it, you can never go back to playing the victim. Power is not something you earn. It's not something you're granted. It's not even something you take. Power is something you recognize was always yours, something you stop pretending you don't possess. The moment you cease the performance of powerlessness, the world reconfigures itself around this new reality. But here's what they don't tell you about this recognition. It's terrifying for everyone else. When you stop asking for permission, you become dangerous. Not because you're reckless, but because you're operating from a fundamentally different paradigm. While others navigate the complex web of social contracts and unspoken agreements about who gets to do what and when, you simply act. While they're calculating the social cost of assertion, you're already 10 moves ahead. This isn't about becoming cruel or manipulative. Those are the weapons of people who still believe in the scarcity of power. This is about recognizing abundance where others see limitation. Consider the digital battlefield first, because it's where most modern power struggles begin. Someone decides to challenge you publicly online. Maybe they question your competence. Maybe they mock something you've shared. Maybe they simply want to diminish you for sport. The conventional response is either defensive explanation or wounded silence. Both concede power. Here's what you do instead. Nothing. For exactly 4 hours. Then you respond with a single line that reframes the entire interaction. They say, interesting take from someone who clearly doesn't understand the basics. You respond, I appreciate the engagement. No defense, no counterattack. Just a statement that positions their attack as validation of your influence. Watch what happens. The silence after that response carries more weight than any argument you could have constructed. The psychology is precise. By refusing to play defense, you force them to explain their aggression. Your calm acceptance transforms their attack into an admission of your relevance. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, but he also understood something more subtle. Sometimes, the most frightening thing you can do is demonstrate complete indifference to someone's attempt to harm you. It suggests a level of power so secure that their aggression is merely background noise. But here's where it transcends simple digital maneuvering. This principle scales across every domain of human interaction because it's rooted in a fundamental truth about the nature of power itself. Power is not reactive. Power does not explain itself. Power simply is. When you operate from this understanding, every interaction becomes an opportunity to reinforce this reality. In professional environments, the dynamics become more complex, but the principles remain constant. Picture this scenario. You're in a meeting and someone attempts to undermine your proposal by saying, I think we need someone with more experience handling this kind of project. The room goes quiet. Everyone waits for your response. The weak person defends their qualifications. The clever person deflects with humor. The powerful person does something different entirely. You pause for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for the tension to build, but not long enough for someone else to fill the silence. Then you say, John, I appreciate your concern. Why don't you walk us through your approach? You've just done something devastating. You've acknowledged their challenge without accepting it, then immediately placed the burden of performance on them. You haven't defended yourself because you haven't accepted the premise that you need to. The beauty of this response is its layers. On the surface, you're being collaborative and open. Underneath, you've exposed their criticism as empty posturing by forcing them to offer something constructive. If they have a genuine alternative, you've created space for it, demonstrating confidence in your own position. If they don't, you've revealed their intervention as pure sabotage. Either way, you maintain control of the narrative. This kind of maneuvering requires understanding something crucial about human psychology. Most aggression is performative. People attack not because they genuinely believe they can defeat you, but because they need to perform dominance for an audience. When you refuse to participate in this performance, when you neither defend nor counterattack, but simply redirect, you expose the performance for what it is. The aggressor is left shadowboxing while you're playing chess. Here's exactly how you execute this in a romantic relationship when your partner tries to manipulate you through emotional withdrawal. They give you the silent treatment after an argument, expecting you to chase them, apologize, and restore their emotional equilibrium. Instead, you do this. You go about your life normally. You don't pursue the conversation. You don't apologize for positions you stand behind. You don't fill their silence with noise. When they finally break, and they will break, because silence only has power when the other person needs your attention, you respond with genuine curiosity. I noticed you've been quiet. Is there something specific you'd like to discuss? You've just transformed their attempted punishment into your gift of attention. You've made it clear that their approval is not the currency you operate in. This isn't about being cold or unloving. It's about refusing to participate in power games that diminish both people. When you stop rewarding manipulative behavior with attention and anxiety, you force more authentic communication. You also demonstrate something profoundly attractive: security in your own worth that doesn't require constant external validation. But the real power moves happen when you understand that every social interaction is a negotiation of reality. Most people accept the reality presented to them. They agree to see themselves as others see them, to accept the roles assigned to them, to operate within the boundaries others have established. This is the fundamental mistake. Reality is far more negotiable than most people understand, and the person who understands this has a devastating advantage. Consider what happens when someone attempts to publicly embarrass you at a social gathering. They tell a story that makes you look foolish or share information meant to diminish your status in the group. The conventional response is either hurt withdrawal or defensive correction. Both concede that their narrative has power over you. Here's what you do instead. You smile. Not a forced smile, but the genuine smile of someone who finds the situation amusing. Then you say, "I love that story." Tell them about the time and you redirect to something that reveals their vulnerability without malice. You've just demonstrated that their attempt to control the narrative was meaningless because you control how you respond to any narrative. The profound realization here is that no one can diminish you without your cooperation. They can create situations, spread information, even damage your reputation temporarily, but they cannot touch your actual power unless you hand it to them. Your power exists independent of their opinion, their approval, or their validation. When you operate from this understanding, their attacks become irrelevant, not because you're pretending they don't matter, but because you genuinely understand they don't matter. This is where the philosophy becomes dangerous to the established order. When enough people understand that social power is largely consensual, that the hierarchy exists because people agree to see it and participate in it, the entire structure becomes unstable. Your refusal to accept your assigned position forces everyone else to question their own. Your demonstration that the rules are optional reveals that everyone else has been following them voluntarily. Machiavelli wrote that, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." But he also understood that the ultimate power lies in being indispensable. When people need you more than you need them, conventional social leverage becomes meaningless. They cannot threaten you with withdrawal of something you don't depend on. They cannot manipulate you with approval you don't require. They cannot control you with access they cannot restrict. Here's how you build this kind of position systematically. First, you develop your competence to the point where your contribution is measurable and significant, not just adequate, exceptional. This isn't about perfectionism, it's about creating objective value that speaks for itself. Second, you cultivate multiple sources of validation and opportunity so that no single relationship or situation holds disproportionate power over you. Third, you practice emotional self-regulation to the point where your responses are chosen rather than reactive. When someone cannot predict how their actions will affect you, when they cannot control your emotional state through their behavior, they lose their primary tool of influence. But here's where it gets truly sophisticated. The ultimate power move is creating situations where other people's success is tied to your success, where diminishing you diminishes them. This isn't about creating dependency, it's about creating alignment. When attacking you becomes self-destructive for your attackers, when supporting you becomes obviously beneficial, you've transcended the need for defense entirely. You've created a structure where power flows toward you naturally. Watch how this plays out in a professional context. Instead of competing with colleagues for limited recognition, you become the person who creates opportunities for others. You introduce people who should know each other. You recommend others for opportunities that don't fit your skill set. You build a network where your success amplifies others' success. Within 6 months, attempting to undermine you becomes social suicide within your professional circle. You haven't defeated your potential enemies. You've made them irrelevant by making allies more valuable than enemies. This principle scales infinitely. In romantic relationships, instead of trying to control your partner's behavior, you become so genuinely fulfilling to be around that they choose you repeatedly, enthusiastically, without coercion. In social groups, instead of fighting for status, you become the person whose presence elevates everyone else's experience. In business, instead of competing for market share, you create new markets where collaboration becomes more profitable than competition. The psychology behind this approach is ruthlessly practical. Most human conflict stems from scarcity mindset, the belief that there's not enough power, recognition, love, or opportunity to go around. When you operate from abundance mindset, when you demonstrate through your actions that there's more than enough for everyone, you neutralize the scarcity that drives most aggression. People stop trying to take from you because you're obviously the source of giving. But here's the darkest truth about power. Mercy can be more terrifying than punishment. When someone attacks you and you respond with genuine benefit to them, when you refuse to be drawn into the conflict and instead offer something valuable, you demonstrate a level of security that's profoundly unsettling to people operating from insecurity. They cannot understand your motives because they cannot imagine operating from such abundance. This makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. Consider the ultimate test scenario. Someone launches a coordinated attack on your reputation. Maybe they spread damaging rumors in professional circles. Maybe they turn mutual friends against you. Maybe they try to sabotage a project you care about. The conventional response is defensive counterattack, gathering evidence, building alliances, fighting fire with fire. This approach has two problems. It legitimizes their attack by treating it as significant, and it forces you to operate in reactive mode rather than creative mode. Here's the power response. You do nothing immediately. You let their attack run its course without interference. While they're burning energy and credibility on destructive behavior, you're investing energy in constructive projects. 6 months later, when their attack is forgotten and your new achievements are visible, the contrast is devastating. Their destructive behavior looks petty and pointless next to your creative progress. You haven't defeated them, you've transcended them. They're still fighting yesterday's war while you're building tomorrow's peace. This requires something most people find terrifying: genuine faith in your own value. Not the kind of false confidence that requires constant validation, but the deep security that comes from knowing your worth is independent of other people's opinion of it. When you truly understand this, attacks become irrelevant, not because you're pretending they don't hurt, but because you genuinely know they cannot diminish what's real about you. The philosophical foundation of this approach is radical. You are not your reputation. You are not other people's opinion of you. You are not even your past actions or failures. You are the consciousness that observes all of these things, the awareness that chooses how to respond to any situation. This consciousness cannot be damaged by external attacks because it exists independent of external circumstances. When you operate from this understanding, you become functionally invulnerable to the kind of psychological manipulation that controls most people. But invulnerability is just the beginning. The real power comes when you understand that this same consciousness that cannot be diminished can also not be contained. There are no limits to what you can create, achieve, or become, except the ones you accept. Most limitations are social constructions, agreements about what's possible, appropriate, or realistic. When you stop accepting these agreements, you stop being bound by them. This is where the philosophy becomes genuinely dangerous to existing power structures. When you demonstrate that social rules are optional, that hierarchies are consensual, that limitations are largely imaginary, you inspire others to question their own acceptance of these constructions. Your example becomes a form of revolution, not the violent overthrow of systems, but the quiet dissolution of systems through non-participation. It's exactly how this manifests in daily life. Someone tells you that your goal is unrealistic. Instead of defending your goal or arguing with their assessment, you say, "I appreciate your perspective," and continue working toward your goal. You've just demonstrated that their opinion of what's realistic has no bearing on what you choose to pursue. You haven't been rude or dismissive. You've simply declined to be limited by their limitations. Someone tells you that you're not qualified for an opportunity you want. Instead of defending your qualifications or accepting their assessment, you pursue the opportunity anyway. If you succeed, you've proven their assessment wrong. If you fail, you've gained experience and demonstrated that failure is not catastrophic. Either way, you've shown that their gatekeeping has no actual power over you. Someone tells you that your approach to relationships, career, or life in general is wrong. Instead of defending your choices or arguing with their judgment, you continue living according to your own values and let the results speak for themselves. You've just demonstrated that their approval is not required for your happiness or success. The pattern is consistent. You acknowledge others' perspectives without accepting them as binding on your reality. You remain open to input without surrendering your autonomy. You stay responsive to feedback without becoming reactive to criticism. This creates a kind of psychological aikido where others' attempts to control you become redirected into energy you can use for your own purposes. Machiavelli understood that the lion cannot protect himself from traps and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. The modern interpretation of this wisdom is that sometimes you need cunning to navigate complex social situations, and sometimes you need direct strength to handle direct challenges. But there's a third option that Machiavelli only hinted at: becoming so valuable to the ecosystem that both traps and wolves become irrelevant. When you're the person who creates opportunities rather than competing for them, traps become meaningless because you're not pursuing the bait. When you're the person who adds value to every interaction, wolves become irrelevant because attacking you becomes self-destructive for potential attackers. You've transcended the paradigm where power is something scarce that must be fought over, and entered a paradigm where power is something abundant that can be shared. This shift in paradigm is the ultimate power move because it makes traditional power games obsolete. When someone tries to manipulate you through scarcity, threatening to withdraw something you supposedly need, you're genuinely unconcerned because you've built a life of abundance where no single person or opportunity is irreplaceable. When someone tries to control you through social pressure, threatening to damage your reputation or relationships, you're genuinely unaffected because your security comes from internal sources rather than external validation. But here's where the philosophy reveals its true depth. This isn't about becoming isolated or independent to the point of disconnection. It's about becoming so genuinely valuable to others that your connections are based on mutual benefit rather than mutual dependency. It's about creating relationships where both people choose to participate because participation enhances both lives, not because either person needs something from the other that they cannot provide for themselves. This kind of relationship, whether romantic, professional, or social, is actually more intimate and satisfying than dependency-based relationships because it's chosen continuously rather than maintained through obligation or fear. When someone chooses to be with you because being with you improves their life, not because they fear the consequences of not being with you, you've created something much more powerful than control. You've created genuine influence. The distinction is crucial. Control is always temporary because it requires constant energy to maintain and inevitably generates resistance. Influence is self-sustaining because it creates value for everyone involved and generates willing cooperation. Control makes you responsible for other people's compliance. Influence makes other people invested in your success. Here's how you build this kind of influence systematically. You become genuinely interested in other people's goals and actively helpful in their achievement, but not in a way that creates dependency. You offer assistance that builds their capacity rather than their reliance on you. You share opportunities, knowledge, and connections freely, creating a network of people who associate you with their success. You maintain your own boundaries and standards clearly, but without judgment of others who make different choices. Within 2 years of operating this way, you'll find that most conflicts resolve themselves before they reach you. People who might have caused problems become protective of you because your success is linked to their success. People who might have competed with you become collaborative because cooperation is more profitable than competition. People who might have criticized you become supportive because your work reflects well on the entire network you're part of. This is the ultimate power, creating a reality where attacking you is attacking the system that benefits everyone around you. You haven't eliminated enemies. You've made being your enemy a strategic mistake that intelligent people avoid. But the deepest level of this philosophy goes beyond social maneuvering or strategic positioning. It's about recognizing that your consciousness, the awareness that's reading these words right now, is the source of all your power. This consciousness cannot be damaged by external events. It cannot be controlled by other people. It cannot be limited by circumstances unless you agree to see those circumstances as limiting. Every morning, you wake up with the same fundamental choice. You can accept the reality presented to you by others, or you can create the reality you prefer. Most people choose acceptance because it feels safer. It requires less energy. It provides the comfort of fitting in, of not standing out, of avoiding the responsibility that comes with genuine power. But once you've tasted the alternative, once you've experienced what it's like to operate from your own center rather than reacting to everyone else's agenda, acceptance becomes impossible. You can no longer pretend that you don't have the power to change whatever you don't like about your situation. You can no longer blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck for outcomes you don't prefer. You can no longer participate in the collective fiction that power is something external, that some people have and others don't. This recognition is simultaneously liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it means you have far more control over your experience than you've been taught to believe. Terrifying because it means you're responsible for your experience in ways that most people refuse to acknowledge. When you can no longer blame others for your dissatisfaction, you have to either change your situation or accept that you're choosing to remain dissatisfied. The people around you will resist this transformation because it threatens the agreements they've made about how reality works. If you can change your circumstances through choice and action, it implies that they can too. If you refuse to accept the limitations they've accepted, it suggests that their limitations might be self-imposed. If you demonstrate that social rules are optional, it raises uncomfortable questions about why they continue following rules that don't serve them. Your transformation forces everyone around you to either elevate their own game or justify why they can't. Most people will choose justification because elevation requires admitting they've been settling for less than what's possible. Your example becomes an indictment of their choices, even though that's not your intention. This is why genuinely powerful people often appear to move through a reality that operates by different rules. They're not breaking laws of physics, they're declining to participate in social agreements that limit possibility. They're not superhuman, they're fully human in ways that most people fear to be. They're not lucky, they're actively creating the conditions where positive outcomes become more likely. The ultimate power is recognizing that you've always had this capacity. Every moment you've spent waiting for permission, you could have been acting. Every moment you've spent seeking validation, you could have been creating. Every moment you've spent wondering if you're qualified, you could have been gaining experience. Every moment you've spent afraid of failure, you could have been learning from experimentation. The transformation isn't about becoming someone different. It's about stopping the performance of being less than you are. It's about discontinuing the habits that keep you small. It's about recognizing that the person who's been waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right circumstances, is the same person who has the power to create all of these things. This recognition changes everything because it makes everything a choice. Your career becomes a choice rather than something that happens to you. Your relationships become choices rather than something you settle for. Your emotional state becomes a choice rather than something determined by external circumstances. Your entire experience of life becomes creative rather than reactive. When you operate from this understanding, you become dangerous to every system that depends on your compliance, your need, your fear, or your ignorance. You become a source of power rather than a consumer of power. You become someone who creates value rather than someone who competes for value. You become someone who expands possibility rather than someone who accepts limitation. This is not a temporary state that requires constant effort to maintain. This is a recognition of what was always true, that once seen cannot be unseen. You are not and have never been powerless. You have been pretending to be powerless because pretending felt safer than accepting the responsibility that comes with genuine power. The moment you stop pretending, everything changes. Not because the world is different, but because you are different in the world. And once you change, you cannot go back to the small version of yourself that needed permission, sought validation, and accepted limitation as reality. You are inquebrable, inflexible, imparable. You always were. You were just playing a different game. Now you know the rules of the real game. Now you can play to win.